Welcome to Touch Technology Review. Today we have a special guest in the studio. We have Andrew Sill from Sill Marketing here to talk to us about all things technology. In particular, we're going to have a conversation about the debate, shall we say, that's popping up recently in relation to the benefits of DSLRs versus mirrorless cameras. And Andrew has brought in a whole bunch of his gear, which we're going to be discussing and reviewing. So welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for coming in. Now, the first thing I wanted to open up with was, of course, that whole debate about which one is better, a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. I'm often asked that very question on the channel. And to me, it's very hard to say that mirrorless is better in any way, but certainly it has its advantages. First of all, it's more compact and lightweight. There's some advantages in there not being a mechanical mirror that gets in the way, so it can be faster. But in terms of quality, it was always thought that you could never get better than a full DSLR camera. What are your thoughts about that now?
Well, I think it comes down to what you're shooting, really, because there are pros and cons of everything, as you know. And you know, if you're in a studio kind of environment, your requirements are going to be different to if you're running and gunning. Yeah. And what I've found with the work that I'm doing, which is more run and gun, I'm looking for something that's going to be adaptable to the environment and the unknown environment. So definitely what I've experienced is some of the newer mirrorless technology has made that run and gun shooting a bit easier. So managing low light being a critical one for me, but even the size of the device as well. Yes. You know, if you're traveling, you don't want to be lugging heavy gear, and I think that's opened up the door for mirrorless cameras to come in there. But to me, it's more about aligning the technology to what you're trying to achieve. Yes. And whether it's DSLR or going mirrorless, well, but it seems like everybody's trying to go mirrorless now. Every brand is coming out with mirrorless cameras. So, well,
it's interesting you say that because Canon and Nikon have announced that they are looking at releasing a professional range of mirrorless cameras this year, but haven't done so far. So they're really behind the eight ball there. But there's been a lot of anticipation about these new release mirrorless cameras and whether they're going to be comparable to the Sony, which we don't know yet. Yeah. So that will be interesting to see. And certainly if they do, I'd be very interested, because one of the things that's kept me in the ecosystem of the Canon gear is the glass, which quite often you make a commitment to lenses and you get accustomed to what they can do, the quality. And that's one of the things that's held me back from jumping over to Sony so far. So what's been your experience with the lens quality in the Sony range?
Well, it's funny. I've basically got every brand of camera. So I'm running Nikon, Panasonic, Sony, and Canon. Yes. I started as a Nikon shooter, shooting stills. Yeah. And so I invested in some really good glass. Yeah, so every time I bought a new camera, I would always go to the Nikon lenses. And there's some really nice Nikon lenses that I've got and that I understand and, you know, how they work, etc. And so what I've done is, starting with the Panasonic GH4 camera that I bought a while ago now, is I had a Metabones adapter so that I could use the Nikon lenses. Yes, you lose out on some of the functionality, but it can be managed okay manually. And with the style of shooting that I was doing with the Panasonic, that was okay. Yeah,
that's so you lost out on the autofocus capabilities?
Lost out on autofocus. Yes. All the aperture settings had to be done via a ring on the adapter. Right. And so it was just a matter of mentally, when you got to the shoot, remembering which camera you had and what you had to do. Yeah. So you could actually achieve the same thing. Yeah. But it meant I didn't have to invest in new glass to suit the Panasonic. When I moved into, say, more vlog style videos, autofocus became critical. Absolutely. And so I bought another camera, of course.
Which camera was that?
Canon. I bought a Canon 80D, which has unbelievable autofocus. Has the flip out screen, which made it perfect for vlogging. That's why a lot of vloggers would use that style of camera. Yes. And I used just the cheap Canon glass. You know, I was looking for wide angle, so a 10 to 18 lens. Yes. And I just got the cheap sort of $300 lens, and that's been okay. Yes. You know, it struggles in lower light applications, but it's all right for vlogging. Yes. Then moving forward, shifting to sort of a Sony A7S Mark II mirrorless camera, I had to decide what to do, and it was a tough decision. And I chose almost a hybrid model, I call it. So yes. I wanted to use my 70 to 200 f2.8 Nikon lens because it's just a phenomenal lens.
Yes.
But I also wanted something that could autofocus to that, was less involvement of me having to manually adjust everything in a really run and gun kind of environment. So I ended up buying the 35mm Sony lens. So I bought one Sony lens that could cover me for interview style shoots.
Yes.
With autofocus, and then I bought an adapter to handle zoom and a few other lenses that I've got with the Nikon 50mm f1.4 I think it is that I've got. So that's the good thing nowadays is there are adapters around for all these different cameras enabling you to use the different brands of glass that you've got, and they're actually improving. There's a lot more integration happening. It does cost a little bit more to get ones that sort of integrate, and I suppose Canon's the easiest to integrate with most.
Yes.
Yes, Nikon, I can find the answers, but every time I'm researching, Canon, there's always Canon stuff. So I think Canon glass is recognised as being really good.
Yeah.
The Sony glass isn't bad. It's just really expensive for what it is. And their range isn't there at the moment. I think they still need to do a bit more work on that range.
And you obviously haven't made the decision to get rid of the Nikon glass because you've become accustomed to it and like it so much you can't quite part with it at this stage. So that's where you've adopted the approach of trying to make it fit on these new cameras.
Yeah, and I love Nikon for stills. It's just something about no matter which camera I pick up.
So you still have your Nikon camera as well?
Yeah, D750 that I'm using, which has video capabilities, and I've tried it, but I use that camera purely for still photography.
Yes.
And I invested in some good glass. I want to maximise that investment. And it's actually, it works okay. It's the 70 to 200 f2.8 Nikon lens is just phenomenal.
Yeah,
it's by far and away the best lens that I've got.
Yeah.
And when I've adapted it to the Panasonic or the Sony, it's still great. So there's no reason to replace that just because I've got a different brand. And generally when I'm using a 70 to 200, for example, I'm shooting it manually anyway and manually focusing. So I don't.
So what type of shoot would you be using it for? Like say you've put your 70 to 200 on the Sony, would that be like an interview face to camera type shot?
No, it's more more action kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I do a lot of work with sort of model aircraft.
Oh, yeah.
And if I'm at a flying field shooting a drone or something like that, then and I need to zoom in, it's perfect because sometimes in those action situations, it's very hard with any video camera to pick up the action.
Yes.
So it's handheld and I'm just, it's almost like B-roll kind of stuff that I'm shooting. And so I can use it for that. So
and that'll be manual focus mode as well?
Manual focus.
Yeah. So you're setting up the scene, you're getting your focus in advance, knowing where the action is going to happen and just waiting for it to...
It's hard because it's hit and miss a bit sometimes. But, the Panasonic's been really good. It's hard to tell, what it's like when you're looking through a tiny monitor out the back, whether you're in focus or not.
Yes.
But more often than not, it's actually not that bad.
Yes.
Just your aperture settings up a bit to give you a bit of leeway, but no, it's been okay.
So I've noticed you've got the Nikon glass on that Panasonic right now. Do you also have a Panasonic lens, or you're just using? Oh, right.
I actually
so you just bought the body.
The story of this GH4 was there's a bit of a backstory. I was using a Sony HXR NX5, so a big dedicated video camera that I bought in about 2010, and what I wanted to do was sort of change to a different look that camera couldn't provide, a more modern look. And so this was the first sort of foray into a sort of a mirrorless camera or micro 2/3 camera. And there were a lot of rave reviews around the GH4. And so I ended up buying it second hand. I got a great deal, came with a good Metabones adapter, and I put the Nikon glass on it. I tossed up whether to purchase a Panasonic lens to get that autofocus capability because things such as the flip out lens, when you're vlogging, is a great thing to have. But I ended up buying another camera instead. So as we end up doing, but I still find this Panasonic, it's not the latest version, but I'm using a lot for events. I'm setting up on a tripod, pointing at a stage and shooting, an hour presentation because the battery life is phenomenal on this camera.
So how many hours do you get out of it?
Oh, I haven't tested exactly how many hours,
a few hours.
I'll shoot a whole day and I'll still be on one battery.
On one single battery?
I did if I do a 40-minute shoot, it's still got half the battery left kind of thing that's continuous shooting. So that fulfills a specific purpose. So I can't get rid of that. Put a cage on it so that I can mount a few other options as well. So I bought that separately. Sometimes I use an external monitor for focusing primarily, not really for color, because I always struggle in trying to match the colors, but for focusing. So that's been a good little camera, but I had to upgrade. I had to upgrade for just one very simple reason: low light. So
low light, when we talk about low light, there's a number of factors there. And obviously the Sony wins out because it's got a full frame sensor. So the GH4 being a micro four thirds, can you see the difference in still photos or video, apart from low light situations? Do you see a difference in quality at all?
Yeah, I do. Look, the Sony A7S Mark II is phenomenal. It's incredible. It's very sharp. So it's the sharpness of the image. It's very different to the Panasonic. Panasonic's probably a bit softer. Yes, you can bump the ISO up and still maintain some quality in low light situations, but it's not just that. It's just the sharpness of the image that you can get out of the Sony. And again, there are these trends in the look of your video, and if you want that sharp look, then the Sony A7S is just it's a phenomenal camera. But in saying that, this could be even better. Like if Canon are going to come out with a mirrorless camera and they want to dominate, it's very, very simple what they need to do.
What do you think's missing?
Okay, flip out screen.
Yes.
As soon as you get a flip out screen, a lot of us are shooting ourselves on camera. Right, and so when you've got that flip out screen, it just makes everything easier. But even as something as simple as being able to flip out the screen, rotate it to close it for carrying purposes so you don't damage the screen, something as simple as that can be advantageous.
And you know what else? Also, sometimes you're framing a shot and you're in front of the camera. You know what I mean? So you could be doing a landscape shot and you could be setting something up and you want to see from that a different perspective. So having a flip out screen is not just for selfie type videos or photography. It can be used to be able to monitor your shot from different angles.
That's exactly right. And that's what I love about the ADD does it. The Panasonic GH4, GH5 do it, and they're touch enabled as well, which adds another level of flexibility. And
so Sony's really got to bring flip out screen in their next models.
Look, in their models, they've got some sort of articulation in the screen, but it's not flip out. If it's a flip out and touch enabled, then straight away, if you can buy a camera like a Sony A7S Mark II, low light beast, with a flip out screen and good autofocus, that's the other thing it needs. The Canon still, I think, wins in that on that front. But good autofocus, flip out screen, every vlogger's going to move to the Sony because of the low light capabilities. But if Canon come out with their camera that rivals the Sony with the flip out screen,
and they have it all,
touch screen, good autofocus, everyone's going to move to the Canon.
In relation to that flip out screen, you've got another Sony sitting there. What's that camera we have?
Okay, so I don't know why I bought this camera, but anyway,
I'd like to talk about it.
I do know. Well, so with a lot of the run and gunning shooting that I'm doing, and I'm doing a lot of vlog components to my shooting, I've always been aiming to try and reduce the footprint of what I'm carrying. So especially if I'm traveling interstate or internationally, I want to carry less gear. And the good thing nowadays is everything's getting more compact and the quality's getting better. So my latest attempt to reduce my footprint was buying this little Sony RX100 Mark V. Now, it's not the latest, it's a Mark VI, and I literally heard today that there's a sort of like a Mark V-A version, which has got some added functionality, but this suited my needs. So the advantage of this is that it's got the flip out selfie screen. So the aim for me and the purpose of this camera is predominantly a traveling vlogging camera that can fit in my pocket. Now the other idea of that is because it's so small, I'm probably more likely to use it in that vlog environment. And with the pop out screen, it makes it perfect. The stills aren't actually bad. It's actually a really good camera. And it's got f1.8 glass on it. So I'm getting down some better. I'm getting lower light capability as well out of this, and it will shoot 4K as well. So now I match my Sony A7S Mark II for say B-roll, the RX100 for the vlog style. So this is now, blurring the lines a little bit, that I'm going to China later this year, and I'm going to try to shoot everything on the RX100 and see how it goes.
So you're just bringing that camera, or you?
I'm going to take the Nikon stills because I need to take some still photography whilst I'm there, and I'm thinking
everything video
is going to be on this.
Sense. Absolutely.
Because I think I can get away with it for what I'm shooting. So it's a point and shoot. I've played around using iPhones, which have been pretty good actually, as long as the light's okay.
Yes.
So this is really my attempt to improve, go one step up from mobile phone footage, handle a bit of low light, still compact, shoot 4K internally, and flip out screen.
Yeah.
It's important.
And a lot of what you're saying is consistent with the philosophy that the best camera that you have is the one that you have with you. So a lot of people focus on specs alone, and they're not thinking about simple things like ergonomics, convenience. There's a lot of different factors to do with getting the right shot at the right time. And I think when you're traveling, having a camera that's lightweight can help you get a better shot. And the other thing about small compact cameras, and I found that using my Olympus OMD, is that it's less conspicuous when you're shooting street photography, when you're out and about. When you go out with your big Canon camera with a zoom lens like that, everyone's looking at you and asking questions.
Yeah.
A little camera like that, people are just going to think, hey, he's just taking a few snaps. There's nothing to it. A tourist, and you get away with a lot more. So there's advantages to having something that's smaller and inconspicuous when you're traveling.
Definitely. And for me, that lightweight kit has been something that I'm chasing because my back can't handle carrying heavy gear anymore. And thankfully, everything is getting smaller and quality is improving. So, you know, when I bought the A7S Mark II, I had to decide, I had the lens dilemma. And what am I going to do? And I looked at a couple of different lenses, Rokinon lenses to put onto the Sony. And what I found is I just kept on coming back to I needed something that was small, something that was compact, and that's why I bought the 35mm Sony, because the 35mm Sony is like, that's tiny and it's a lightweight sort of lens. The Rokinon is a beautiful lens. It provides a really nice image, but 35mm equivalents hanging out further, so that's more space that I need to take up in a bag. And now, you know, when I'm traveling, it's not just camera gear. I'm taking a drone with me just in case I need that. There's gorilla pods or tripods or monopods, and so it all starts to add up. And then even spare batteries, which is a downfall of this. The battery life's not quite as good as Canon and Nikon DSLR batteries. Chews it up. The Canon is awesome. The Panasonic is awesome. But it could be a consequence of the style of camera. The battery's not that big.
But really, you just have to factor that in and carry around a few batteries. It's just an extra cost you've got to deal with there. And looking at the three cameras we've got lined up there now, what's interesting about it is Sony is somewhere in the middle. Like if you look at the compact camera through the GH4, if we stack it up against a full DSLR camera, it's about the right size. I think they've got it right for that reason as well. They've got a camera that's pretty lightweight, compact, but yet is big enough to feel like you've got a decent camera, and it's going to have the right specs to deliver the job, and it's got a nice look about it as well. That's something about the Sony. They've really nailed it in terms of the form factor completely, haven't they?
It is. I do like it. Okay, pros and cons of everything. Sometimes I find if a camera's really small, if I'm doing B-roll and trying to sort of manually pan without it on a head, it's hard sometimes.
You need a bit of weight.
What I do with the Sony, because the other advantage of the A7S and the RX100 Mark V is the slow motion footage capabilities, shooting at 120 frames or 100 frames if you're shooting PAL, and it's because you're slowing everything down, you don't see the motion blur or anything, so the shakiness, so you can get away with it. But it's funny, the RX100, when you're holding it in like selfie mode, is really good. It's really stable. Most of the time from shooting vlog stuff, I'm putting it on a gorilla pod to get a bit of distance away from me, which is another technique in itself for another day. But it's just, I do like things to be a little bit smaller. Just there is that convenience, even when it comes down to traveling and using lighter weight tripods. That when I had my big Sony dedicated video camera, I had this mega expensive rock solid tripod that was needed to hold it up, and it's an unbelievable tripod, but to travel with is a nightmare. So now I'm actually getting like travel tripods that I can put in a suitcase. And then when I arrive, I pull out the suitcase and carry around with me, clip it to a bag or something like that. And that's all that's needed with these smaller cameras. And also, I think, we used to do shoots and turn up with the big camera and people were really impressed and thought that we were pro because we had the big camera.
Yeah.
I think that stigma's changing as well.
You
don't need to have the show pony effect of having the big camera.
Yeah.
I do like some of the big cameras that are out there, but again, it comes back to how what you're shooting. Yeah,
well, there still is an element of that. Your clients, if they're paying you good money for a job, are going to want to see a lot of equipment so somehow they can justify the expense and feel like they're getting something that's superior. And there's a lot of DIY stuff going on now. People in the office shooting their own videos. So if you rock up with some really impressive looking gear that happens to be larger and just commands a lot of respect by virtue of the way it looks, that's certainly relevant to us as video creators, but practicality is more important than that.
If we want to wow people, we can turn up with our sliders, our
absolutely
gimbals, our big massive drones. There's so many ways.
Big lighting rig.
There's so many things we can take to a shoot to if you want to impress people. But you got to carry it. That's the problem.
That's a problem.
So you carry stuff around.
Yeah, no, I hear totally. The other thing I wanted to bring up was we touched upon it briefly before, was the necessity for 4K video in this environment, and obviously the Sony that you have shoots in 4K. Now, one of the things that prevented me from upgrading to the latest version of the Canon, the 5D Mark IV, was the fact that even though it shot 4K, it has a crop factor. So as soon as you go into 4K mode, it zooms in and you're essentially not using the full capacity of the full frame sensor. So in some respects, you have a diminished quality. And the other really annoying thing about that is you don't get to use the full extent of your lens. So I like to shoot a lot of my scenes wide angle. And one of the benefits of full frame is that you get the full 16mm effect, which is the way it always used to be. It doesn't become, a 35mm lens. It's true wide angle. So how have you found shooting in 4K on the Sony, specifically in relation to that?
Yeah, it's been good. And primarily I do shoot just full HD settings. But 4K is, for me, it's all about giving you flexibility in the edit. So when I'm shooting 4K and I'm doing an interview, I can get a couple of different angles from the one
you can zoom into it.
Yeah, I can zoom into it. Because what I'm finding is most of my work's ending up on YouTube. Not many people are streaming it. If you're in Australia and you've got slow internet connection, you're not going to be downloading 4K file. And if you're watching the small window, it doesn't make a lot of a difference. And also, if you're transferring files to customers that want to use that video for their commercial work, it's a bit challenging, and even processing power for the computers and stuff like that. So most of what I'm doing is shooting 4K for the edit so that I can zoom in, zoom out. And what I'm finding is nowadays, if you're making a choice with a camera, 4K is going to be important. It's something that's not going to go away. We're already moving into 5K spaces and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So you're not going to go and buy a camera that just only does full HD anymore.
Yeah.
So it's all about that flexibility, having that option.
Just knowing you've got it if you need it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm getting a few jobs that are being spec'd as 4K, like they require 4K footage more and more than before. Whereas a few years ago, it was very rare a client would actually ask, can you shoot it in 4K? So it is really becoming imperative that you at least have the option available should you need to shoot it. Although having a 4K camera myself, I tend to always shoot in 4K because I can. But the downside, like you say, is a workflow later on. You've then got these massive files to plow through. And not only do they take up more space on your computer, but they're harder to work with in the timeline. So my latest MacBook Pro handles it quite well, but scrubbing 4K onto the timeline, like tons of layers, really becomes difficult. It slows it down.
I find that when you watch reviews on YouTube and they say, "Oh yeah, the computer was great with 4K footage," it's just like a throwaway line.
Yeah,
is it?
Yeah,
that it's you've either got to adjust your workflow to deal with it, or make sure you've got a supercomputer that can handle it. And so there's these added costs.
Yeah.
I had to
literally update my MacBook Pro so that I could shoot, so that I could edit in 4K, because it wasn't actually doable at all with the 2011 model I had before. So
no hope in hell. But obviously, I'm running. I'm doing most of my editing on an iMac, and it's probably a couple of years old.
Yeah.
Upgraded the RAM in it when I bought it, so it was a bit gruntier for video editing. But that will struggle even with the 4K footage.
Yeah.
Look, if you're patient, it's fine. But if I'm traveling and I'm editing, I actually use a MacBook Air.
And you can get away with that.
Yeah, it's great. not 4K.
Yeah.
But you know, shooting full HD. I was in the US earlier in the year, shot 8 videos in 8 days, like vlogs, daily vlogs, and which is tough going.
Yeah.
But I did the whole thing on a MacBook Air.
What software were you using?
Premiere.
Premiere, right? Not even Final Cut.
It was great.
Wow, that's amazing.
Absolutely great. You get used to the screen size.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting back to the 4K thing, I'm not going to even attempt.
You wouldn't go there. Yeah.
And especially if you're working to a strict deadline, you've got to wait for this footage to muck around. It's just...
Yeah. But nonetheless, we know 4K is here now. And like I mentioned before, clients are starting to request it. People have 4K TVs now. It is really the next paradigm, and we have to move towards it. And like you said, even 5K and 8K. So there's, red cameras you could consider and go all the way to the top there, and it's probably going to just keep increasing.
Imagine if Red came out with a mirrorless style camera.
Well, it's funny that you should say that, because Red actually came out with the hydrogen mobile phone about 6 months ago. So clearly they're experimenting with some different options for consumers, prosumers perhaps. And it wouldn't surprise me if a mirrorless camera was in the making. And certainly if it was, I'll be one of the first to line up to try and get my hands on one of those. Thanks for coming in, Silly. Really appreciate your time. If you've got any questions for us about the content we've discussed today, feel free to put those questions in the comments box below. If you've got any suggestions for up and coming videos, any topics you'd like to have covered, also feel free to share those, and we'll see if we can bring them to you in an up and coming video. We'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.